Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for sharing this space with all of us today. I see so many people joining in the room right now, up to 72 so far, and that's so exciting. Thank you so much for being here today. Welcome to the first International Peer Respite Soteria Summit. My name is Sei Kim, and I am honored to welcome you all today. We have over 700 people from all over the world registered for the summit, and it is truly inspiring and exciting to see that so many folks are passionate about compassionate alternatives that prioritize self-determination, human dignity, and mutually supportive and authentic human relationships. I discovered peer support and peer-run respite by chance, and after a pretty traumatizing and dehumanizing psychiatric hospitalization. I'm having trouble talking today. And it was such a liberating and empowering moment in my life that completely changed the entire trajectory of my life. I've learned so much. I have unlearned so much. I've really learned to be with another person without any predetermined outcomes or agenda. And just the power of really being able to connect with someone, knowing that we share this deeply challenging yet powerful experiences that help us grow together and move forward together. And I've heard from many folks that people have similar experience with Soteria House as well. So I'm really glad and happy to be here with all of you so that we can talk about these things and actively move towards making these options more accessible and available to other folks in our communities as well. So we are meeting today for 3 hours, and we will have a 15-minute break. This summit will continue next Sunday, which will be the final session. And the meeting time and link are the same as today's. So please join us for the last session for an opportunity to connect with other attendees to talk more in depth about specific topics. This summit has been organized by a volunteer planning team who came together with a shared passion for alternatives. I've seen people work hours and hours and hours for weeks at a time to make this come together. So I'm deeply grateful for all the volunteers. And I would like to thank all of those who contributed time, resources, and ideas to make this summit a reality. We would like to recognize the donations, large and small, from many of you that have made the summit possible. We are still accepting donations for the summit and the work that will follow, so please feel free to support these efforts by making a donation. The summit was organized by Rethinking Psychiatry and Mind Freedom. We especially want to thank our sponsors, National Empowerment Center, New York Association of Psychiatric Rehabilitation Services, Montana's Peer Network, Intentional Peer Support in honor of Sherry Mead, who established the world's first fully peer-run respite, Resist, the International Society for Psychological and Social Approaches to Psychosis, ISEPP, the International Society for Ethical Psychology and Psychiatry, Anonymous Donor in honor of Emotional CPR, People USA, Copeland Center for Wellness and Recovery, National Association of State Mental Health Program Directors, and ALGALS. Please note that we are recording today, both the panel and the Q&A. If you'd rather not be identifiable in the Q&A, either turn off your camera or change your name. Please feel free to do whatever makes you feel comfortable. Recordings of the summit will be available at the summit webpage. Closed captioning is available for each session. You can now click on the CC button at the bottom of your screen and click on Show Subtitles, and they will show at the bottom of your screen. You can also click on View Transcript, which will appear on the right side of your screen as a complete transcript. The closed captioning will not be perfect. Zoom has a hard time spelling Soteria and Peer Respite, for example. We hope it will be helpful for those who like it, even though every word may not be accurate. Please feel free to use the chat function to make comments or ask questions. And we ask participants to keep themselves on mute until the Q&A session begins. And if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment, you may turn on your camera and raise your Zoom hand by clicking on the reactions button on the bottom of your screen. We look forward to interacting and diving deeper into topics that are brought up, but I would like to ask, please also to listen to the moderators for more specific instructions on asking questions. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Stan Rossowski, who will be the moderator for today's summit session.
Thank you so much, Say. It's really an honor to be here with all you beautiful people. And I'm not just talking about the people on the screen, but all you people out there in the audience who've taken this part of your Sunday or possibly early Monday morning to be here with us today. This has been so exciting. Like Say, you know, this wasn't something I planned on, and it hit me that how we encounter this moment in our lives and something happens and we are changed and transformed, and we begin a journey that we never expected, never thought would be possible. And it's been quite a journey for me. I call it recovery. I began to be asked to be of service, and lo and behold, here I find myself being part of this amazing summit. I'm really grateful to all the people who've been showing up. We've been meeting since May, and some people have been part of 2 meetings a week, you know, throughout that time to make this happen. So it's been very much a collaborative process. We've all come together with a shared goal. Something else that has struck me is how we are being with each other, and it's been a very beautiful thing. My experience of these previous summits has been that we are actually experiencing this feeling of being with each other, even though we're on Zoom, even though we're separated by great distances, but we're being with each other. And I find that very powerful. I hope other people are sharing some of that feeling. What I'd like to do first is I would like to invite each of you, and I'm going to go across my screen. So this is the order that you appear on my screen in, but I would like each of you just to take a moment to introduce yourself and maybe tell us one thing that's really been exciting you today. And the audience, I would like you maybe to consider that too. What got you excited this week? Put that in the chat. And let's see. I'm going to start with Elke.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Now it's evening in Belgium, so I say good evening. So I'm a Belgian girl. I'm very honored to be here today to talk about Soteria and the development here in the Flanders. I work in the mental health support center, and I support recovery-oriented practices and methodologies in the mental health care. So the Soteria work group is one of the practices I support and I facilitate, and I also coordinate together with other colleagues the education for people with lived experience. I actually am a social worker, so I always worked with youngsters with mental health problems. I really loved my past jobs, but I constantly bumped into the limits that were set in advance. So I wasn't, for example, allowed to be with the youngsters, and that choked me. I wasn't allowed to sympathize too much in order to protect myself. And I was told to maintain a distance so I could execute my work in a better way, in a more distant way to protect myself. And it didn't work for me. And an expression I always remember was that my boss said I had to put on a filter on my feelings, like it's something you can put in literally, but it doesn't work that way. I'm very sensitive. And so my job ended in a serious burnout because I could not be who I want to be in the presence of the youngsters. And now I'm so fortunate to work alongside so many people who literally say the opposite, where it's important to be and to work with your whole being, with your heart. So it felt like coming home and being part like this, the Soteria movement internationally. It motivates me so much to do what I'm doing here in the Flanders, to continue working the way I work. So I'm very glad to be here. Thank you.
We're really, really fortunate, blessed to have you here too, Elke. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know what you're talking about, and I've had those same experiences. You're next on my screen. You need to unbreak, unmute. Still muted. You're
Yes.
not to worry.
Now?
That's
Now?
good. Yes.
So thank you for inviting me to participate in the panel today. It's an honor to be here with my companions from Flanders, Dag and Elke. We are there sometimes, and we work together and with a dream. And the dream is to start a Soteria House in Belgium, and whatever more. And yes, and in the 70s, I witnessed the starting up of the first healing home in the middle of the city in Belgium. I was still a student at this time, and I become very involved in the daily life of the house by direct contact with the guests and caregivers, and this influenced me a lot in my life. This was just the beginning of a long research and dream to starting up for people who are in church, how to deal with their distress and their sorrows and their traumas. So at that time, I did a lot of research about how to give people to deal with the lived experiences and how to express themselves. And this is also at this moment the drive for my work and for my inspiration to create a healing space for people with lived experience. So that is what I can express at this moment.
Thank you very much, Huguette. It's so, again, we're so blessed to have you here. I've said that if I was going to have a crisis, I would want to be with Huguette. I would want Huguette to be there with me. Thank you. Dag, you're next.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dag. I'm a colleague of Elke. So as Elke and Huguette said, we're from Belgium. I work closely together with Elke, but also with a lot of other people, mainly as a companion in the practice development of open dialogue in Flanders. That's my main work and my main mission, together with so many people involved. The thing on open dialogue is, the plan is always that we'll, as soon as possible, we're seeking connection and dialogue with everyone involved, and make it possible to listen openly to the different voices, experiences, and perspectives. In that way, not everyone is only involved, but also supported by each other, by us, but also by each other. So we bring companions together, trying to be a companion and involve other companions. And in that work, I met so many people, and we started the house we started the house El Camino Beckenham, and we're trying to make it Soteria House. And quite important to say that if I say we, that's people with own experiences with a psychosis, people with family experiences, and people with professional experience. So it's a thing that we're working on together, and that's how we do this in Flanders. Yeah.
Thank you, Doc. Cindy, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so grateful to be a part of this. I'm so grateful that the voice of people who have been through experiences, who have been through the hospital, and also been able to experience peer respite is welcome here. I'm a voice here. Here, being able to go to a FIA, the peer respite that's run by the Wildflower Alliance, was really a changing point in my life. I was part of hiring the staff and all these conversations about what would it look like and what do we do and how do we handle this and that. And then it came to a point where I needed to go there. It was kind of amazing. And right now I'm a national trainer for intentional peer support, the Hearing Voices Network approach, and the alternatives to suicide approach. And so I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. I'm really excited to have you here, largely because you have so many different perspectives throughout your journey. You have been in so many places, from being the person who is in distress to now training other people and taking on leadership roles in this community. And so you have so much to offer, but it's really interesting because I'm sure as you do your work, you're able to move back and forth through your different filters, perspectives, you know, and use that experience. Say, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here. You know, you also have many different perspectives and great experience. And you're up.
Hi, everyone. My name is Say Kim. It is such an honor to be here with all of you today. Elke, a lot of what you shared really resonated with me. My background is in social work and law, and that was big part inspired by my own childhood trauma. And I found it really difficult to be in this role where I was kind of expected to act as if I had all the answers and I knew what was the best for people that I was working with. But what was happening, what I was supposed to be doing, didn't really align with the fact that I had my own pretty much lifelong mental health challenges, the fact that I was really struggling with the fact that I didn't have an immigration status that gave me a sense of safety and security, and just all these intersecting social identities where I was really struggling to find out who I was and how I fit in this world. So presenting this front was such a fracturing experience where I just didn't know who I was, and it was painful and it was difficult to continue pushing on. And those were some of the reasons that I ended up experiencing a really traumatic and dehumanizing hospitalization. So finding peer support and being involved with a peer on respite really just has been such an amazing healing and learning experience. And I'm really happy to be here to share, you know, my experience and my thoughts with all of you today. So thank you.
Thank you, Say. Remy, you're next on my screen. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. I am Avremi Friedlander. I am from Israel. I am also a living experience former, and also a hospital former. I was hospitalized in a psychiatric hospital 16, 17 years ago. They say that I had a psychotic catatonic episode. I called it a spiritual episode. the doc, I never took medical drugs, so I think it's important to say it. And today, I think I know how to handle my spiritual thoughts or episodes. I don't know how to say it. And when I was in the hospital, the doctor that I saw was a Professor Pesach Lichtenberg. And after 6 years from my episode, I went to his ward. I went to volunteer there because I started to learn psychology, and I made it a lot of trouble. I was in the world like a Patch Adams. Everybody knows the movie. So I did a lot of trouble in the psychiatric ward. And then Pesach Lichtenberg called me to his room, and I thought, like, all my life he want to say to me that I cannot stay, work, or volunteer in his world because all the trouble that I made there. But the opposite was, and he told me about his dream to open a Soteria in Israel. And we started to think about the dream together. And we opened 3 houses in Israel of Soteria. And after it, other people opened houses like Soteria in Israel. And I'm very excited to be here because I think it's not only how I feel. I think a lot of people here saw that when they saw that how the hospitals works is wrong, maybe they thought that they are alone. They have like a psychotic thoughts that the hospital is wrong. And it's very exciting to see here a lot of people that want to do different psychiatry.
Thank you. Yeah, I believe that we are at the beginning of a worldwide movement. You know, I'm hoping that as we move forward, that we're going to stay connected and we're going to be able to provide training to people who want to do this work, that we're going to be able to share our experience, that we're going to be able to talk in more depth about the things that we've been talking about in the course of these panels. And but it's so great to have you part of this, you know, because once again, a different perspective, a different lens, and it helps us, certainly helps me to understand better, to see what other people are seeing, how other people are feeling. Thank you for being here. And Adrian, you're the last, although you alphabetically, you would have been the first. So Adrian, welcome.
Thank you, Stan. And I just really want to start by saying thank you to everyone for being here and just naming where you're from. I've really worked hard to stay local and not look outside of Santa Cruz, but it just really is inspiring to see so many people from so many places. And so just thank you for being here today. I have a bit of a cold and it's raining here in Santa Cruz, so I might lose power. I live up in the woods, so I'll find a way back on if I can. But I'm a voice here, and I call them spirits. I commune with them on a regular basis, pretty much every day. On a semi-regular basis, I still experience, thoughts of my teammates trying to get rid of me, even though I'm the manager and I'm really good with people. So I really do live the experience of, stress and strain on my thinking, on my thoughts, and work really has been a challenge to balance. I almost think of self-care as a religion at this point. I don't even like calling it self-care really, but I really do think of it as my prime directive to stay afloat. I came off of Social Security about, I guess it's been 7 years now. I was on it for about 20 years. I got off of a subsidized housing program also to become the manager here at Second Story. I'm one of the founding members of the program. I'm the last of the beginning crew. It was a bit rocky at first, but what we've really developed it into over 10 years is a family, and a family that embraces each other and the community that we walk alongside. I can't say enough how much working at Second Story has transformed my life, and I see the transformation taking root in many others' lives as well. But I just want to emphasize that it really is I found myself healthy, even in spite of the things that I still face. And it's been about 20 years since I've been hospitalized even, but I spent a good amount of time of my 20s in and out of hospitals, really struggling to find the balance that I so desperately sought. And just such a beautiful twist of fate that this is the community that I found myself in after all the struggles that I've experienced.
Thank you, Adrian. Yeah, you bring up some interesting points too. Many of us, I believe, still live with our experiences of what might have been distress or altered states or what have you, and we have to find ways of living with those things and still continuing to do the work that we do. So I know I've found a way of kind of sometimes putting things in a box, in a plexiglass box behind me here somewhere where I'll come back to you later, but right now I need to be with you here in this moment. But I think that's probably a shared experience, among us. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm really looking forward to having this conversation. I'd mentioned earlier in speaking about this idea that we are being here with each other, as this larger group, that we sit here listening to each other, hearing each other, hopefully without judgment. And so we've talked quite a bit about this idea of being with, but I was hoping that we could look at it a little bit deeper today, and possibly not for too long. When I came to this, I had no idea. I'm a male, and males fix things. If you present to me and you have a problem, my response was always, okay, well, let's fix that, right? Let's, here, I'll do it for you even, and so it took a long time to learn to listen, to respect the other person, to learn to still my own mind and leave space for that other person to be with. I found that once I had figured that out, and it came through a process, I learned about voice hearers. I learned about active listening. I learned about motivational interviewing. I learned about a lot of different sort of techniques and processes and tried to incorporate them. And one day I realized, I'm being here, I'm being with, this is what it's like. I also found that for me, the experience is like entering a flow state, because when I'm in that space, it's like an altered state, when I'm in that space, I'm totally present. It's everything seems intuitive. I'm not thinking analytically. I'm responding from somewhere, and it seems like I'm always I don't know, I just feel like myself and that person are there in that moment. We're feeling each other, and we're present to each other, and it's magical. So that's kind of my experience, but I wonder if you guys, because we're going to go from this to figuring out how we find other people who might be helpers. How do we find people who have these qualities? And so I wonder if you have some thoughts about what these qualities are. What is it about you that makes it possible for you to do it? Many people tell me I couldn't do what you do. And I think that's true. There's not many people that can do what we do. So what is it about you that makes it possible to do this kind of work? I'd like to start with you, because
yes, for me, it's important that I learn to stay with my feelings, to be honest, and to resist the struggle with my feelings. And if I can resist the struggle with feelings, I can stay with the feeling of another person, and I can also resist to act on it. But it takes a lot of time for me to learn not to act on my feelings and to be with my feelings, and how to handle very heavy emotion without becoming the emotion. Not to be overwhelmed by the emotion and to go in dialogue. But this took a lot of time to learn this process. It's a process, and it is an ongoing process. Every day again, I learn again how to deal with a new feeling and what happens in my life, unexpected things, how to deal with it, and just to accept the reality, as she is at that moment. At that moment.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess we figure this out every day. We figure this out by doing. Rather, I don't know if it's really possible to put this into a manual. You know, this quality, and like you say, it takes that lived experience. Remy, how is it for you? I know that you do this work, and this is very much a part of your work because you work to support the people in your house and so on. So you came to this from, well, they said they labeled you with psychosis, etc. And so how did you find how to be with other people?
First, I think being with is very intuitive. I think more you learn, less you can be with. I think being with is when it's simple communication between people. And because I came from a catatonic situation, my being with is more non-verbal communication. It's more like how I contact with another person. I think it's more about how can I love people and how can I less be fear from them. Because I think a lot of times when we see a person in a catatonic situation, in a psychotic situation, or in a severe situation, we start to get a fear or to be an anxiety, and you need to be in an inner place that you can have trust on people, that you can see a person that is like be very mad or very angry or not rational, and you can feel that you can trust him. You can feel that you can communicate with him. You can feel that you can love him. And I think when you're in that position, you can feel him and can be with him. I'm not being with from the intellectual part of mine. I'm being with my heart. I think that is my roots in how I teach or with other staff in our houses.
Stan, you're muted.
Somebody muted me earlier. I'm sorry. There might have been some background noise. Somebody felt the need to mute me. Thank you. It does seem like this is something that we learn. Does anybody think that some people are just born with this quality, being able to be in this kind of space? I'm just wondering.
You know, I don't know if anybody's born with it, but when somebody can approach somebody with an open heart and an open mind, and that I'm not trying to win, convince, or control you, I'm just trying to partner with you. And I think a lot of kids have that, and sometimes it gets taught out of them. right? And a quality that I think is really important is, a degree of humility. I may not know what the actual problem is. I may not know what is the solution for this person, but if I can actually be with and partner with them, thinking about the IPS skills and principles, can I do that? And I know I have a particular gift of being non-judgmental, but I'm not so sure whether I was born with that or not. But I like to tell people, I have no room to judge you because I've done all sorts of things, and I want to echo that comment about some intuition and to approach somebody with love and hope and possibility versus fear. And so if I'm freaking out, I need to take care of my business so I can actually be present with a person and have it not be about me. So much in the traditional mental health system is not about what's going on for the person. It's about taking care of the person in the provider role. How do I contain, control this person? And so it's a blessing to say I don't have all the answers, but I'm willing to partner with you while we try to figure it out.
True. Thank you. I see somebody wants to really share something with us. I'd just like to point out we're not able to take questions from the group right now. You're welcome to put your comments in the chat, and Rachel is monitoring those. Once we come back after the break, we will get into discussion, and hopefully everybody will get a chance to chime in. Thank you, Adrian. It's good to see you back. You guys are having a cyclone bomb out there, aren't you?
We are, yes, and in the forest particularly, it can be the power can disappear suddenly. So, especially when there's rain like this.
Okay, so as long as we've got you here, what is it about you that makes you good at this? What are your qualities? I don't know if it's something that you can put on a resume, but what is it about you that makes it possible for you to enter this state of being with a person who is in distress and could, for many people, inspire fear, but you're just going to be there and be present and be accepting.
Thanks for asking. I think that for me, I was so silenced by myself when I was younger, and so I really shut down. Having the breakdowns really, or breakthroughs, whatever you call them, really crumbled me up and made me more of an introvert or more internal experiencing the world. And so what I found that got me through everything pure about other people's experience. So in high school I was a bit of a wild cannon, but in my 20s I really wanted to explore the world around me, and so I got really curious about people and their experience. No matter where I was, I would just be a listener and really get, in a way, it distracted me from my own internal hell, but it also informed me of reality, of consensus reality, of abstract reality. I found that during the really tumultuous times, ending up in the hospitals, as nightmarish as those scenes could be in my mind, that I really loved being around people like me, and in a world where there was no one experiencing the things I was experiencing in the world of sanity, or the so-called sanity that exists. So I found in the hospital, in the psychiatric unit, there's all kinds of abstract realities that I could connect with and commune with and be a part of and share. And so as I got out of the struggles, I found my ways towards a better, more balanced lifestyle, I'll say. I would say I've gotten away from the struggles, but I just found that there's that continuity still been a deep part of me. So in my work at Second Story, I am a listener. I'm also someone who likes to look at things from every different angle, and I've got well versed at communicating and finding out the as IPS says, story. So it really has, and I'm really inspired by people's experience, and
just in ways that move me deeply.
Thanks, Adrian. I appreciate that you may be cutting in and out through this session, so I appreciate you coming back, and we may have to struggle a bit with your connection, but really glad that you can share your experience with us. Jamie, I see your messages. I'd just like to let you know that you're seen, but we can't respond right now, and we will give you a chance when the time comes. Having talked about all these qualities in us, so some of us are wanting to start a peer respite or a Soteria House in our own communities, which is going to involve a number of things, forming a board and organizing all that bureaucratic stuff, but it's also going to involve hiring people to work in our houses. Cindy, you mentioned that at one point you had a role in the hiring of people, staff for your house, and I wonder if we could talk a bit about what qualities it is that we're going to look for in people that we're going to bring into our operation. It's a unique kind of a position that probably not many people can fill. So what would you look for? How did you go about finding people to work in your house?
Well, we have an advantage in that we're a community, and we're already in the community. We have offered hearing voices groups and alternatives to suicide groups in the community, and we have community centers. But we put out ads, and in the interview process, we would include just asking people what are their thoughts. What are their thoughts about the traditional mental health system? And we would throw out scenarios. If this is happening and this is happening, what might you do? And not with an expectation that everybody's going to have a great response, and we would have to tell people, speak from your heart. Don't give us the answer you think we want. Tell us. And, so when people could get in the perspective or have a curiosity about what the other person is going through, if they had a natural tendency to want to be supportive versus controlling, that gave us a clue. And I also want to say it's really important and sometimes challenging to hire a variety of people. So people with different backgrounds and representing different demographics, so that when you have different communities come in, like depending on what kind of communities are in your area, whether it's a language issue, a culture issue, do you have staff that can partner with people? It can be really jarring to go like from the inner city to, the wealthy small town urban setting. Like how, do we have a staff that can represent lots of different, race, gender, class, poverty, racism, sexism, they all impact how somebody feels about being in the world.
Yeah.
It's part of somebody's experience, and it's really important to be able to find people that, if they don't look like me, are they at least educated on some of the issues I've gone through? And so that is how we did. We already had a community and to consider, and we also did the typical put ads out. In Massachusetts, we have a certified peer specialist training. I think every state has some version of that, but it just didn't work out in Massachusetts to draw from that pool. I think like in the states where they use IPS as a foundation for their peer support trainings, it would have been easier. And so there are people who have never, they've had their own experience in the mental health system, but they had never had an experience being in a peer support role, and they worked out wonderfully. But that's the key. If somebody says to me, oh, I could take the person down, or I'll call 911, nope, that's not going to be the person we want to hire, or if somebody could be honest enough and say, I'm not sure what I would want to do, but this is what I'd be afraid of, and this is what I hope we could do, that that we could work with.
Thank you. That's great. I invite some of the comments. Maybe somebody else has some thoughts.
Yeah, I have some thoughts. I was thinking about the fact that it seems to be our luck that we meet so many people. Actually, it's my luck. It's all about meeting people. In practicing this open dialogue approach, we meet so many people, professionals, peer workers, who are willing and able to be transparent, to be reflective, to be open, to be present with other people. And it's good to meet people, other people in such a human way. It's hard not to feel connected to those people, and it's actually a mutual thing. It's really happening that all those people involved in those open dialogue practices are really keeping the connection with each other as a sort of companions, not only in those open dialogue meetings, but also in the work that we do. And it's that kind of people that are getting involved in, for instance, El Camino. But in El Camino, we have something else that helped us, or that still helps us. In the beginning, we were quite, we felt the urge to start a house, but we weren't strong enough. So we invited people with their own experiences with psychosis, people with family experiences, peer workers, professionals, to come to the house and have an open circle. And in these open circles, people from their own experiences share their experiences with psychosis and life as fellow citizens with each other. And more professionals and peer workers are coming to these open circles. And now, not a coincidence, one of the professionals coming to these open circles wrote a project for the organization she works with. Her name is Annemie. She's worth mentioning her name. She wrote a project to her organization, and now she got the chance to do the half of her time in helping us to make El Camino, Bekenham, and Soteria House. So that's how we meet people, with giving them the chance to meet each other, to share with each other, and to find a new role in this system and in this house that we're building.
So that's brilliant, and thank you. Remy, I can't come back to you. But you would draw, Doug, on your community. You would draw on the people who you know and who are already a part of this.
That we know, yeah.
Yeah, which makes sense to me. Remy, you had a comment, I think.
Yeah, maybe I will share how we are interviewing in Israel.
Please.
First, it's similar to what Cindy said, but we have also things a little bit different. First, what we want, how we feel with the person that came to the interview. If I will be in a break, if I will feel comfortable to be with him, if I will feel that I can be with him. This is the first thing that everybody that's in the interview are thinking together. Second, we're looking for a personality that he's a person. You don't feel like a superstar. He's not coming to fix everybody, or he thinks that the hospital are worse and here we will do everything different. no, we're looking for people that feel that they are also can have a breakdown, that they don't feel that they are up from the residents in the house, that they feel that they are in eyes to eyes, the same. It's very important for us, and they can be and can share with other staff. They're not people that all of them want to argue or to fight or to be stronger. They can share not only with the residents, and also with the staff, because everybody are living together at the house. And I can say that the interview is not all the time we see good. Sometimes in the interview we think that the person, oh, he is exactly what we want, and after we see it's not what we thought, and sometimes the opposite. So in Israel we have 1 week that people comes and we are still not hiring them, and we want to see how they are, like in 2 or 3 shifts, how they are in the field. And also after 1 week, we tell them that they still, we don't hire them, and they have like 3 months, that after 3 months, we tell them if we can stay with them or not, because the work is very hard and difficult, and it's not for everybody. So in Israel, that's how we do the process. We also do like Cindy scenarios, and I like in the scenario to get inside my psychotic stand and to be a psychotic person, and to see how the new member how he contact with me, and I'm trying to scare him and to see how much he is not scared. And also, if he's scared, he can talk. He's scared in the situation. It's also another thing that we're doing. It's very important for us.
Thank you. Yeah, it's important in our work, and so the people that we work with also to maintain that equality. We're working, we're walking with you. We're not going to tell you how to do it. We're not the expert. We're not the psychiatrist, so to speak. We're just going to be here with you as human beings. Thank you. Say, you've also, you've been on both sides of the coin, and I'd be really interested in hearing from you about, because you've also managed a house and hired staff. And what did you look for in the people who you brought in, and where did you find them?
I think that one of the most important qualities to me is folks' willingness to unlearn, because we exist in a society where we are basically kind of taught to be in that helper role, and then the person being helped. And the assumption is that the person in the helper role is the professional who knows your life and what you need to do better than you do. So during the interview process, we will talk about what is your experience providing peer support in whatever capacity, whether it's with your loved ones or in like a support group, or maybe in a more professional setting. We talk about how peer support is different from other helping professions. And then we also discuss specific scenarios, like when someone talks about ending it all, for example, or when someone comes to you and tells you that they hear voices or see things that other people in the house don't see. So then another really important quality that I look for is curiosity, right? Is someone making assumptions from the get-go and approaching it from the fear-based perspective, or are they open-minded and just approaching them and trying to just learn more about it with a curious and open mind? So I think those are two of the, and the ability to sit with the discomfort of someone having vastly different experience from you, and that being an okay thing. So those are some of really important qualities that I think that I personally look for. And we advertise on Indeed and with the Wisconsin Peer Specialist Employment Initiative, so more specialized in people who are on track or are already certified to become peer specialists, but we also recognize that we all have lived experience that we can offer, even if we don't really have, like, you know, going through a course and taking a test to become certified might not be our strong skill set, but that doesn't negate the fact that we all have these amazing experiences that we can offer. So we certainly don't require that either.
Thank you. So any other comments on how do we find staff? Can we
Can I say something, Stan?
please, Alka? Yes.
Okay.
Very quiet.
I just want to add, beside the qualities, that I think it's important to connect the various practices in restorative and recovery-oriented practices, that we can connect the practices together to lift each other up. So like Doug was telling about open dialogue, that's one of the areas we are working in, but Soteria is another area. And beside that, there's also the quarter making, it's called, but it's not translatable, I'm afraid. It's to make the society more welcoming people with vulnerable abilities. I'm sorry, it's like a twist in the tongue.
We get it.
But I think the various levels, if we connect them, we meet each other. It's like building a community where all those people are acting with their own focus, but if they work together, it's like a recovery-oriented society. So the stuff I've noticed along the way that we meet people who are like-minded, and we don't need to think the same, because differences makes us more strong. We can discuss about teams and we can not agree, and but that makes the basis more strong to build on, to construct a society. And I think we are fortunate now that there are already people who are volunteering to work in a house who doesn't exist. We are in the process, and there are already people who saying, I want to work there and I want to walk with you guys. It's like along the way, the community is growing and growing, and that's so nice to see. I think training staff is difficult. It chokes a little bit with my ideas. I think we meet them along the way. Maybe it's a little bit idealistic, but I want to think that way.
I think that's a really important point. We can only do this in community with others. We need each other, just like this summit wouldn't have happened if a whole bunch of people had come together thinking, hey, what a great idea, this is really important. So you're really good at building that community, it seems. So I have a couple of questions about that, because you know, it's one thing to get better yourself, but then finding opportunities to be useful, building that community around yourself. If you just sit in your room and think, okay, it's not so bad now, but I don't know that it's going to get any better. So you can become quite stagnant and not really recover, not really grow. You've got to put yourself out there. So this idea of community building seems to be really important here, eh? Say, I see you nodding. What do you think? I mean, you've been involved in community building in many different ways. As a manager, you've had to build community both with the funding providers and those agencies, but also with the neighborhood that your house is located in and everything else. it somehow seems really important that we're doing this together. Can you talk about your experience at all?
Sure. I think it's really important to build a sense of collaboration with the community so that everyone has, everyone is invested in making a peer-run respite a success, and also the principles of peer support that is more ingrained in our society as a whole. So when we talk about mental health, peer support is hopefully also something that pops into people's collective consciousness, along with like medications and therapy and that kind of stuff. And I think that one of the ways that we do that is just by continuously talking about what we do, why it's important, and then just really elevating the voices of people who've experienced it firsthand. Does that answer your question?
It helps. Thank you. You know, I just saw some flash through the chat and we talk about recovery, and I've been starting to put air quotes about the word recovery because it's a word that is being co-opted by the traditional system, you know, just like peer or lived experience is somehow being turned into a market commodity. But somebody said about regeneration, and I remember this coming up before, but I like the word recreation, and I don't know what you think about this, but to recreate means a couple of different things. It means to recreate, and we recreate ourselves every day. We become a new person. I become a new Stan. I'm not the same Stan that would have sat here 30 years ago. I had no ability to do any of this. So this Stan has been recreating himself every day. But to recreate also means to play. And all animals learn. That's how we learn, through play. And so I find that this kind of concept of playfulness is really important to this work that we do, that it's tentative, you know, like if we bite, we don't bite hard, right? I'm thinking about dogs right now, but there is this really playful quality to this. I just, this just occurred to me. It's a little bit off the wall, but I wondered, what do you guys think about this idea of recreation?
Stan, I'd love to respond. Yeah, the Wildflower Alliance used to be called the Western Mass Recovery Learning Community, and we had a lot of issues with the word recovery. Like, who's recovered? Am I recovered? When was I recovered? What was that day? And for some people, they don't relate to the word at all. For me, you know, why do I even have to think about it? Why can't I just have life like everybody else? Life with ups and downs. Why can't I just be in a world where people go through things? We have human experiences, and and plus people should be able, you know, if I think about IPS, should be able to pick their own worldview, right? How do they understand their process? You know, I had a spiritual experience. Yeah, it made it difficult for me to be present in the moment, but I wouldn't give it up. It was like the best thing that ever happened. So it's not like I have to recover from it. I just, you know, need to navigate it. So the little word in my head is, you know, I want to discover, not recover. I want to discover and make a life that I want to live. And I do like your idea about recreating or every day is anew, right? Every day is anew. This is a new day, you know. How do I want to be in the world today? You know, what are the opportunities today? And unfortunately, I have this very long record of mental health stuff and some legal things that follows me. And I'm like, can you just like take me for today and who I am in this moment? So thank you for putting that out there. It's so hard to talk about how people view this because people view it very different ways, and so we attach words as shortcuts, you know. But it's never meant, I can speak for myself, never meant to find somebody's experience for them. You know, the last thing I want to do is replicate the mental health system in that way, you know. So you know, there's many spiritual practices where it's supposed to get difficult, it's supposed to get painful, you know, before this great thing happens. And so, you know, to be open to that.
Very true. Thank you, Cindy. Doug?
I must say that I also like the word recreate, and I also like the word discovery that Cindy mentioned. In fact, there's a colleague of us who's organizing recovery colleges, and now he's also installing some discovery colleges for youngsters. Yeah, but I was also thinking about combining this word like recreating and discovery with co-creating. That's co-create. That's a thing that we really find very important. It's about multi-expertise. It's about being companions to each other in any way around, involving other companions. But it would be nice to make it co-create. That's something more dynamic. Yeah.
That's really interesting. I just read about some recent research. Scientists are trying to understand the human mind, and are putting people into scanners and doing all kinds of tests with them to see what parts of their brain are lighting up. But they found that if they put two people in scanners and have them communicate with each other, very different things happen than when people are alone. And so much of our experience is co-created. We rely on the other, on those around us, to create our experience of the world. So I think that's awful. Thank you. We went on a little bit of a tangent, but I think that was really interesting. And just, I'm having a hard time following your chat, Rachel. I'm so grateful that you're monitoring that. And we're going to come back to all those comments. Yeah, let's co-create, co-create a little bit more. So we talked about finding people to work with us, but what about finding the people to come, the people who need our houses? When I was in crisis, I was sort of fortunate because I already had some experience with the mental health field and sort of knew where I could go and where I didn't want to go. But for many people going into crisis, they're not going to know about this Peer Respite house in their own community or the Soteria House. We often keep a kind of a low profile in our communities. I worked in a halfway house, and most people had no idea what went on there. We were low intensity neighbors. Sometimes we helped people with their shoveling their walks and things, but not many people knew about it. And likewise, these kind of houses are somewhat obscure. They're a little bit outside of the system. I have personally found it helpful because I've gotten to know the community of practitioners here in Winnipeg. And so I'm always reminding people, well, we've got this little group that meets, and it's a useful support for people with co-occurring disorders, for instance. But how do we find our guests? Where are you? Cindy, Wildflower Alliance has been around for a long time, and it's well established in the community. Abraham, I believe that you are in a more psychiatric or you somewhat more connected to the medical community where you are. And each of you has a somewhat different experience of this. So whoever wants to go first, where do you find your guests?
I'll go first if that's okay while the power is still on. So it took a lot of, in the beginning, it took a lot of real work just getting our name out there and letting people know we were here, going to NAMI meetings, going to county coordinator meetings, going to peer drop-in centers or going to other other programs, because we're considered a hybrid respite house, because we're connected to a provider organization. And it's just been interesting watching the growth of the organization around us, even that to be able to connect with people in the system that are running the system to be able to sort of transform the way that people see peers in the workforce. So coordinators would give us a call, and we'd immediately say, well, you need to have them call us directly. They'd ask if we have space. So we'd say, we want you to call us directly. I mean, even one time I was busy and hustling, and somebody called, and we know this person and the coordinator, and he said, you guys got space? And I said, yeah, come on by or something. I was kind of in a hurry, and he said, no, I'll have them call. So we've really trained the people to get the providers to know how to work with us. And they respect us, and they've learned to draw support from our community as well. You know, providers stopping by just to hang out with us. But I think that as far as letting people in, we had to develop a sort of a criteria at one point so that we could, because we'd get some people who were coming in destructive and wanting to try and figure out how they could one up the system of second story. But we feel like people who get the mindset of, this is not a game anymore. We're kind of on the same playing field here. We're all peers. And we found that people don't want to upset the apple cart or create problems. And if they did, then we had to create like a container for the people in the house to be able to embrace and welcome somebody with more energy if that was necessary. But if we're mindful of like a destructive mindset, we have to set boundaries with, unfortunately, when it comes to really causing harm to people, which does happen. That was kind of a sloppy, unthought out rendition, but I hope the gist was there.
It was very helpful. Thank you. Yeah. Maintaining that network and staying connected. Remy, how do you find? Do people come through the system, or are they somehow aware of the house and say, "Hey, I want to come here"?
It's okay. Before I will answer that, we'll talk about what we talked before about the word recovery, or other words. It was an interesting talk, and I want to say one thing from our house. It's okay?
Yes, please. Yeah. Yeah, this is a free democratic conversation, Remy.
Okay. Like Soteria, not everything is like in the order. Yeah.
That's right.
Because in Israel, we saw in the beginning that sometimes people wanted to say words or wanted to do things, and the staff or other residents said, that's now how it's not the way we talk in Soteria, it's not the way Soteria works. And after a couple of times, we understand that Soteria, it will be wrong if Soteria will have only one ideology or saying that's how Soteria works. If you are being with, so everybody is different. Some person, the word recovery is good for him. Other people, maybe also I have a mental illness. It's making me, I don't know, things that can be understand myself. Or so we're trying not to have an ideology that only saying live experience, only saying other words, and we're trying to give everybody the way he feel how to say the right words for himself. And it's not easy, but we're trying to do that. And now for the question about from where people coming to us. In the beginning, we were pirates and was against the government. So it was very hard, because in the beginning, the government was against us. And so it was in the beginning, like from a mouse to ear, everybody talked to another person, friends bring friends, and in the community, people started to hear about us. But after, as a head psychiatry in the country, very liked our work, and then she did for us a good work. And now everybody in our country know what is Soteria, and everybody talking about Soteria in Israel. And we were in the TV, we are in the Facebook, and hospitals bringing us from emergency room to Soteria. And also today the HMOs, they are funding us. So today in Israel, after in the start we were in secret, but after the head of the psychiatry, like the Soteria movement in Israel, so everything get better.
Thank you. Any other comments? Say your house is well established. It seems to me that you're just out there in the broader community and certain people gravitate towards you. Would that be appropriate?
Get a lot of word of mouth, I guess, referral, quote unquote, I would say. So guests who've been at the respite would tell other people about it, and then, you know, we get new guests and such. We do work hard on outreach, so let providers know about what it is that we do, so that when they feel that it's appropriate, they can let their clients know about us as an option. But at the end of the day, it's really important to us that every single referral is self-referral. It's completely voluntary. And then informed consent is the basis. Mutual informed consent is the basis of everything that we do. So during the potential guest conversation that we actually have over the phone, we will talk to each other and treat it as a two-way interview where the potential guests can learn in depth about what exactly is a peer-run respite, what it is that we do and what it is that we do not do. And then we also learn more about what the potential guest is going through and why they feel that having a respite stay may be useful for them in this moment. So it's a lot of back and forth questions, conversations, sharing knowledge, to the degree that the potential guest is comfortable, of course. But we want to make sure that the guests who come stay at the respite know exactly what it is that they are choosing to utilize. So that's a big part. And part of our outreach plan is to host a monthly community event. So it's not at the house because we're trying to make sure that the privacy and confidentiality of the folks who come stay with us and who work there is still being protected, but we are still providing mutual support opportunities for the community as a whole and for the staff members and the community members to kind of connect and learn more about peer support and the peer-run respite.
What kind of events are you trying to do?
We've done bring your own pumpkin decoration, like a winter clothing swap. For the month of December, we make cards that we send out to psychiatric hospitals. So for folks who can't spend holidays with their families. We've done like a yoga outside with the community, board game nights, that kind of stuff. Okay. So what we really want to do is provide space for people to connect and support each other without the explicit label of mental health, but still make it possible for people to learn more about peer support and the respite.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry, that was a little awkward there because I started talking to say and then switch to your thoughts. But people seem to gravitate to you. Speaking with you, it sounds like you're not looking for people. You're not having trouble finding people. They are finding you quite handily. Am I understanding that?
I think that we are finding and connecting with each other. It's a thing that overcomes us, I think. And it's nice to feel that just by meeting each other that we are building this community, not only in open dialogue, but surely in El Camino Beckenham. There are so many people passing, coming back, wanting to stay. We're not a Soteria House, but we already experimented with El Camino weekends, where people could stay and their family and loved ones and other passers-by went to the house, and we just lived together as people. Everyone is suffering, and is living his life. But in that weekend, we just found that we had so much in common, and we had a wonderful weekend. It's like going on a weekend with your family. That's not organizing too much, not having a big plan what to do on each day, but just seeing what people want to do, how they could invite other people to do the same or to do something else. Yeah, I think El Camino is building a community that was already there, I think. Yeah. But we just meet in this house.
Very cool. Any other thoughts on this particular topic? I have a couple of other questions, and one of them actually is came up. I saw something in the chat, and this is a direct question, Remy, to you. I've found, I mean, we're living in a world where race, gender, and so many other means of marginalizing people exist. And I have actually, because I have a rather political interest or curiosity, and I've been following the conflict in Israel with Palestinians. And now it seems to me that generally, I would assume that most of us are very inclusive. We don't even ask, like what your orientation is. You're a human being and you're included. But have you had, in your experience, have you had Palestinians as guests in your house? How does that impact on your work there?
Yeah, we have also Palestinian residents and also Palestinian staff. Okay. And it's in the every day it was very good, but sometimes it's like it can be a problem when a resident come to the house and can be scared. Sometimes can be that way because sometimes when you are in a psychotic or in a paranoid situation, so your stereotype are going bigger, upper, and it was an issue sometimes. But we handle it like everything. So people can have stereotypes about Jewish and Palestinian. People have stereotypes about men and women. And it's things that we handle in the house. It's you cannot ignore those conflicts. I think every place has their conflicts, but more than that, also in Israel, not every house is mixed from everybody. We have like Soteria, we have 3 houses, and one house is only for men, the second house is only for women, and the third house are mixed gender. So people can choose what they prefer. And we have also a house in Israel only for Palestinians. So sometimes Palestinians prefer to be in a house that's for their culture. And sometimes they prefer to be in a for everybody house. So in Israel, we have like 12 houses, and the people can choose the house that is a more fixed for them in their situation.
Wow, that's really a model for the rest of us to follow. I've really wondered about that, and often, I mean, in many communities, there's only one Soteria or one Peer Respite, and we have to cover all the bases. And I know that we need to be inclusive, but again, it's a personal choice. If there are certain circumstances where I might not be comfortable in, but how do we Alka, you've been very quiet. How do you guys deal with those issues? You have another population there that has been marginalized through the years. And so how does that work there? I think I've already brought up something else too. Sometimes it's the residents who may be afraid of the other. So there may be something about the individual who's the guest, and they may have some ideas about if it's an Israeli person, for instance, they may have some preconceived ideas about who Palestinian people are, and maybe fearful or resistant to being with, right, those people. But I don't know if that's the case. But Alka, do you run into that ever in your community and in the work that you're doing?
Here in Belgium, we have a very multicultural society. There are a lot of cultures who live together more in the big cities, I think. I see an opportunity to have the connection with open dialogue and Soteria in that matter. I think if there's some isms, if there's racism, for example, in the house, I think it's very important to express the experiences they have. What is it that harms you personally? How is it that you're afraid of another culture, for example? I think the open dialogue is a way to reconnect with the others with another opinion, because everybody can share their own opinion and stay within themselves. It's not about attacking the other. It's why I'm feeling that way towards another culture or towards another race or another sexual orientation. I think it's important to express their why they are afraid of and what they are experiencing in order to reconnect. So I see there a big possibility to connect the methods together. It's a way of life, I think, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Just quickly, because we have, we're going to be going another 20 minutes and then we're going to take a 15-minute break. I have some cool music queued up for you, and people can go to the bathroom or catch their breath or whatever we need. And then we will come back on the hour for questions and answers. At that point, we will take a few minutes to read questions from the chat, and then I'm going to invite everybody to raise their hands. I know there's always so many people that want to talk. So like we've done the past 3 weeks, we're going to officially close at the 3-hour mark, but then we're going to invite anybody who wants to stay on to continue, and we will continue answering questions and having a conversation. And we're going to try to make sure that everybody who took the time to attend today gets a chance to be heard. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that concept of inclusivity? You know, Voice told a great story about how early in the days of the first Soteria House, there was a period of time where 3 East Indian people were living in the house, and they took on the cooking role because and so for several months, for the duration of their stay, everybody in the house ate curry. And I thought that was delightful because I really like curry, but not everybody might have. But that's how they dealt with it. It was simply on the fly. This is what's happening right now. So this is what we got. He said later, a person with Latino roots came, and his mom had a restaurant and she came and cooked for them. So then they ate Mexican food for a period of time. But so that's one form of cultural difference, you know, that we have to engage with. But for some people may not be comfortable outside of their own culture. So we may need to provide a culturally appropriate space. We have only a few examples of that in the US, and here in Canada, we have very parallel but alternative. We have a hard time coming together with the Indigenous community. They're doing their thing, it seems, and we're doing our thing. But often Indigenous people are not as comfortable in the white circles, let's say. Does anybody else have any thoughts on how we deal with that before we move on to challenging situations?
I have a lot of thoughts bouncing around in my brain, so hopefully I sound articulate. I think that one thing we really need to recognize is that we are living in a society that is a result of hundreds of years of racialized violence, colonization, colonialism. These things continue to impact our minoritized folks day in, day out. And I think that while we can certainly draw from the shared pains and deep feelings and difficult experiences that we've gone through, and we can still connect with each other on that level, that same human level. But I think that recognition is so important, the impact of racialized violence. The BIPOC folks' experience isn't just their individual experience, it's the culmination of historical trauma, generational trauma. So we really need to be aware of that and provide a continuing education so that we are hopefully on the same page and continuing to have these difficult and uncomfortable conversations. And then another thing that I want to touch on really quickly is the idea of being culturally competent, right? Like making sure that trainings are available and that kind of stuff so that minoritized folks can navigate the existing system better. But I think that just having discussions around the cultural competency isn't enough, because a lot of communities have a vastly different understanding of what mental health or what wellness, well-being means. For example, in a lot of Asian communities, like we don't even think about mental health. A lot of Asian cultures don't really have words for mental health. Sometimes some cultures talk about it in terms of like physical pain, right? So trying to fit these different communities that have vastly different understanding into this existing mold isn't going to be very supportive or healing or helpful. So that's something that we need to continue to think about, pipelining resources into our minoritized communities so then they can utilize the resource in ways that best serve their own needs within their communities.
Yeah.
I think it's also, I really appreciate that. I think of Second Story and I'm just going in my mind, the way that Santa Cruz is more Americans with European descent or ancestry, but in South County there's a large Latinx community. I think it's almost the opposite of in terms of demographics. But so we work with everyone North and South County, and it really is this Second Story is a beautiful hub, and there's people of Asian American ancestry, African American ancestry, and we're all kind of. It's hard for me perhaps to see any kind of discrimination that may happen, but when things come up at the house, we tend to talk about it, and but it doesn't come up a lot. I mean, people generally, no matter what community they're from, really we're in it together when we're there, and I think that's one of the beauties that I found in my experience in the mental health community at varying programs when I attended them myself or various things, is that to me it's always been like we're all in this together. And though there is difference between us, differences culturally, differences between us, that if coming from that mindset that there is equanimity, there is benevolence, there is goodness, and at Second Story at least there is an all-inclusive sense of connectivity and being in it together. So it's really been, it really has been a real gift to be a part of this experience in this way.
I wanted to piggyback a little bit on Say's comment. Yes, in the United States, we have a history of many people being marginalized. Is kind of what this country was built on. But today, people in the mental health system get treated differently based on, race, class, gender expression, not just and so when somebody comes in, I agree. If your staff doesn't have the background, they need to get the training. Because, you know, I remember I once saw Patrick Kennedy speak, and he said that his parents had the right to forcibly commit him if he picked up a drink or a drug. And I said to him, yeah, but where you get to go is really different than where I get to go. So I'd rather make my own decisions. You know, I'm glad that works for you. But this assumption that someone may have because, you know, their experience was one thing. You know, with the amount of privilege they carried, their experience is one thing, and for somebody else is another thing. And so there has to be room to acknowledge that or be aware of it. You know, somebody can say, oh, somebody, you know, they'll throw a label on them, they're paranoid. I said, well, maybe they have a right to be afraid, because, like, let's talk about where they live. You know, where I live, people, you know, I look really white. I'm not as white as I look. Where I lived, people, you know, I got to see people shot and died, you know, in front of my house, you know, and clinicians would say, do you feel safe? They were not talking about where I lived. You know, they were talking about, like, there's a bomb inside of me or something. So yes, be curious about people's experience, and if we approach people with curiosity, but they're really, you know, that's one thing, you know, learning about another culture. It's another to replicate the trauma of the outside culture, right? And we don't want to do that in our spaces, and we do want to see everybody as a human being. And I think people make mistakes, and they have to be willing to apologize and learn from them. Even the people with the best intentions can be making assumptions about somebody's ability to be in the world. And when you look at suicide rates, you know, what are the populations that have the highest suicide rate? You know, some of the most marginalized populations, like trans folks, you know, especially trans women of color, are susceptible to violence. And so we have to, when we meet with a person, not only do we think of their story, the context of what brought them here, but to also think of the larger context of what is the world like to them. You know, that the distress is not all, you know, something that they can learn good skills. You know, part of the distress is living in a hostile world for some
right.
folks. Sorry for letting me, thank
No,
you, actually, I'll say thank you for letting me say all that.
Thank you. That was really important, and we have to keep addressing it. Also, the ideas about somebody just I saw the word power come up, and of course, our principles are that no one has any specific power. We're all equals. It's a democratic setting where, as a guest, as a host, whatever role you play, you're basically just walking together. I'm not the expert, you're not the client. We're equals. And so I think that internally we address these issues very well. But I constantly think, because it's constantly in the media, you know, I'm white. I don't get harassed by the police. But here in my community, if I were Indigenous, I could count on getting stopped regularly. My Indigenous friends get stopped on the street. Lauren wrote a really great column in Mad in America describing her experience of going through emergency treatment for an illness. And her experience was great. And she said we should be able to offer this kind of treatment in our houses, which we do. In fact, you know, we are welcoming, we are kind, we are gentle, we are understanding. But I thought when I read her column, wow, you know, around here, if I was Indigenous, if I was Black, if I was visibly different, the response typically isn't so great, you know. And in fact, there's a possibility that I get tasered or even shot. So it really makes a big difference. And I think that racism and is an issue that needs to be addressed by all of us together. And our movement too has to be talking about these issues. So thank you very much for kind of fitting into that. We've only got 5 minutes to go, and I didn't time this all that well, because I wanted to ask a question about, you know, years ago when I was in a recovery group, they kicked me out You know, I wasn't doing the things I was told to do, but that wasn't why they kicked me out. They kicked me out because I was doing damage to the group. My behavior was causing harm to the group. And so I was asked to leave. I got very angry and I figured things out, and I came back very humbly and asked to rejoin. And actually, that's part of the reason I'm still here, was because I did that. And I started to discover my new life. But sometimes we have people who come to our services and they are objectionable. They may be misogynistic. They may be QAnon followers, or they may be misogynists, or they may be racists, and they may not be, you know, and on the one hand, they deserve treatment just as anybody else, but they may cause some harm. And generally people in the house will be supportive to each other, but people engaging in these behaviors don't, they cause harm. Has anybody ever had to deal with a situation like that and had to ask somebody to leave, or to deny somebody access because they weren't gonna do well?
Maybe I will, if it's okay, I will tell what we are doing in Israel. We have it a lot, almost every month we have something like that. And we are trying in Israel that not the head of the house will take the to say if he can stay or not stay. And we have every day we have a conversation of all the house, residents and staff. And if a person every day, yeah, we have every day, twice a day, we have, all the house are getting together and talking. And also 3 meals that everybody is around the meal and talking. And so we are all the day, we are talking all the time, and everything in the house we handle with conversation. So if a person in the house bothering other people, we're talking with everybody, and everybody know about himself that maybe today he bothered me, but yesterday I bothered him, and yesterday they didn't throw me, so why today I will throw the other person? And we are talking, and we are getting to the end of with agreement with everybody together. And yeah, sometimes the person is bothering very much. We tell him that if you will keep behave like how we behaving, he cannot stay at the home. But sometimes the other community can say, okay, maybe now he cannot change his behavior, but we can handle him. It's okay for us. So it's all the time a conversation in the house.
Okay. Yeah, you and I, we talked about dealing with a difficult situation once before. I found your approach really beautiful. Can we talk about that a little bit more? You had a gentleman in your house, and there was a lot of anxiety involved. How did that go?
What is the question?
Well, how do we deal with people who might present challenges to our operations to other residents in the house? We don't worry about, I don't worry about myself so much, but what happens when a person comes into the house and begins to cause trauma or distress for other residents, you know? So yes, we talked about your experience with a man who's experiencing intense anxiety and how you dealt with that. I thought that was really beautiful. And can you talk about that a little bit?
At once a time, there was a struggle in the house here between two people who were together. There was a discussion, and there was a very heavy discussion, and there was a struggle, and so a little bit of battle. And so I invited them to leave the room for some minutes, and what was happened to each of them in the battle. And then in this pause, I took the time to talk of them and to try to understand what was going on, what was happened. And afterwards we came together, and I like what Abraham said. We had a conversation together, and it was very heavy. And but I try to stay in the middle and not to go active in the discussion, but to listen and to support by listening and to ask some questions, and afterwards they could really talk with each other, and yeah. They were very curious. I like what Sue said about curiosity, and about and Cindy about discover each other. The atmosphere has changes from battle to yes, listening, and to this. Yeah, how can we learn from each other and discover each other? But this is some. In 3 hours, what I now try to explain, it needed a lot of time to come to this result, and yes, and this affected the whole group. This was something in a bigger group from so 12 people, and then afterwards I invited the people to come together and to share in the conversation. To share their experience. There were some people have seen the battle, and they were very afraid to join the conversation. But after a little time, all the people came together, and we have a very good conversation about anger and anxiety and battle, and also and after, at the end of the day, we came to with the woundedness of each other, and needed a time of silence to stay together and to honor this very, the deepness of this experience. But it was, yes, this is what I mean. As I said, that sometimes there is something unexpected that can happen and trouble people in daily life, and then how to come. And I trust the power in people, the power, and yes, and the battle is the outside, but in the depth there is a power to yes, and I believe we need to support each other to discover this power in each of us. Yes, this is.
Thank you, Huguette. We've come to the break. There's so many more things to talk about. I'd like to remind everybody that we're going to be continuing this summit with a series of probably monthly meetings. All that is to be determined. You need to come back next week to find out some more of our plans and to help us formulate plans and activities. Now we're going to take a short break unless somebody feels just the need to add before we close.
I just want to throw this out there, and I do want to break. When we have relationships that are not based on force and coercion, that takes care of a lot of power struggles, power dynamics, people feeling threatened. When you take that out, you know, unlike in a traditional setting where it's all about that, where instead of being threatening and trying to dominate somebody, you know, to actually partner with them, that really takes a lot of the messiness out of it.
Good, thank you. Okay, we're gonna go.
And one last thing, I hope we can. Grace brought up a point, and I want to go to break too. And I just, if we can, at the break, after the break, talk about the power dynamics between staff and between staff and guests.
we certainly can. And as we've already pointed out, it's typically a very democratic process. We're always equal, I believe. But yes, we can go into a little bit more depth in that as well. Okay, it is 12 minutes to the hour, so we will come back at 7 minutes after, no, 3 minutes after. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to play you some music. I hope you enjoy it. And we're going to put up some slides with thanks and so on. And then we'll see you in 15 minutes. I would like comment. Not sure if everybody had a chance to answer the poll. I'm going to invite everybody now to turn on your cameras if you wish. We will take a few minutes to answer some questions from the chat. I see Rachel, you've joined us. Thank you so much for. I've been not today, but I've monitored the chat previously, and it is a really difficult job to follow all the thinking and at the same time try to pay attention to what's going on in the conversations. So thank you so much for taking this on for us. Now, we may have to ask some of you to unmute, it looks like. I'm not sure if you're able to unmute yourself. So I will open you up there, Avram. Mirabai, thank you for joining us. Anybody who wants to join be seen, you're welcome to. If you want to remain anonymous, you can change the name on the screen. We are recording this. We will be editing the film. So if you have some concerns later and wish you had not appeared in the recording, we will find a way to edit you out. So this is about safety and privacy. So but also seeing your faces really gives me a sense of community. Jim, just 1 second, because we're going to come back to you. We're going to start out with some questions from Rachel, but what is your concern? What have you got to say, Jim?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Actually, I was wondering if the panel might discuss how somebody that's a caregiver for somebody that's struggling put themselves in a frame of mind, because what I've noticed is the more I relax, the more my son is able to relax. But it's hard because of the stress and that kind of thing. So anybody that would like to respond to that, thank you very much.
And I'm not sure process-wise, but I'd love to respond now, if that's okay, Stan.
Okay, but by all means, we do want to get to some questions from the chat. There were so many, and they're so important. But yeah, if you'd like to say very quickly something in response. I know that a lot of people have come just to find some tools. I always attend seminars with the thought, what can I take away from this that I can incorporate into my daily practice? And so I think this is sort of what Jim is asking. But
yeah, so I'd love to offer that through the Wildflower Alliance, we offer a group for family members that distinctly talks about not the identified patient, but how you take care of yourself. What are your fears, hopes, and practical skills around communication with somebody who may be in an extreme state. So the short answer is, whatever way that you can know what your limits are, what your fears are, what your emotions, when they come up, what they are, is helpful. And if you're interested in doing that with a group of people, there are some groups out. The Bay Area Hearing Voices Network also offers a family and friends group.
Thanks, Cindy. Thank you. Okay, Rachel, you've been thinking about all these questions that have been popping up. I've only caught them briefly as they flashed by the screen in front of me. I know that there are some really important issues that people have raised and questions that people have. And once again, folks, you know, we can only touch the tip of the iceberg today. You know, it's a limited amount of time. I don't know if this could be taught. I think for many of us, it's been a lifetime of experience, you know. And so we learn by doing, but we also learn in community with each other and from each other. And even as we share, I think anybody who is in the business of teaching knows that we learn more as teachers than our students ever do in their position. But we're going to have to be coming back and continuing to meet, and we're going to be exploring many of these topics in much greater depth than we're able to right now. Huguette and I have already had a little bit of a contact. We would like to do a whole big session on just the principles of being with, for instance, and I'm delighted, and I hope that we're going to have a chance to offer that. But there will be many other aspects of peer respites and soterias and building. We're going to try to have some mentorship available and so on. Let's turn to Rachel. And Rachel, what is the first question coming up?
Yes, I just wanted to say something really quick before I get to the questions. I know people have expressed a lot of different opinions and are maybe coming from different perspectives, and we're not going to agree on everything. We certainly don't want people to come away with hurt feelings. Of course, we want everyone to be respectful. I think this is a lot of the idea of intentional peer support, where we can hold multiple truths, that we want to respect that people may be coming from different, very different perspectives, and there will be a lot of things we won't agree on, and that's okay. But yeah, thank you, everyone. Excuse me. The first question was, any ideas on how to reduce the power and authority of the drugging, shocking, forcibly incarcerating medical model system in order to create more room and public respect for soteria and peer respite programs? It's clear to me that persons in peer type healing modalities are but a minuscule number compared to the millions on drugs and in mainstream institutions.
If I understand the question, it's how to reduce the power in the doctors have in the regular psychiatry world or places. I can share what we're doing in Israel. We're all the time in contact with the hospitals, and they're all the time we're showing them what we do and thinking with them what they can bring to the hospital. And one of the big things that in Israel, a couple of words are thinking about, it's shared decision making. And it's not so easy in hospital because a medical model is hierarchy. And to a doctor to think that he need to think together with a patient, it's out of the box. But they're starting to understand that you have to do it, because every doctor is thinking the word see that a lot of people that they are treating them, after they go out from the hospital, they stop taking medication because people feel that they force them, and sometimes they don't think if it's good for them, not good for them. They throw away everything that people force them. So in Israel, we're a lot of talking to the hospitals about the point of shared decision making.
Great. Anyone else on the panel want to speak to that?
I think we want to always work in co-creation with every movement, every thing we do, every step in the way. There's always multi-perspective. There are various perspectives who have a seat on the table. so every input is equal. For example, in the work group Soteria, we have like 65 interested people and a group of 20 active people who step with us along the way. And in those groups are family representatives, persons with lived experience, psychiatrists, caregivers, and persons with expertise. And I think it's important to have all those voices. And also, it's not against medication or pro the alternatives. I think it's all the voices together. And that's the more long-lasting way, I think. It's a slower way, but it's working. I think we wrote a manifesto with our vision about what a Soteria House must be and why we claim an alternative approach of psychosis. And there are various psychiatry institutions who affirmed the manifesto. So that means that they agree with our vision. And it's, I think, very progressive if we can step alongside the way. Yes.
So of course, I have a different opinion in that I've been subjected to what my family thought, what the psychiatrist thought, and nobody was listening to me. And even when I did talk, because I had a diagnosis, what I had to say was undermined by the diagnosis. And so what I think that people are doing, we create alternatives and then we demonstrate they work, and then we're the evidence that they work. And so when I think back to the largest self-help movement in the world, AA, those people were all considered hopeless, and they came together, and as they got success, it's gone to the opposite, and I think bad extreme, where people are ordered to go to it. But I think that's what's going to change people's minds. When I walk back on a unit that I used to be locked on, and I'm able to facilitate a group, then people believe that it is possible to move through these experiences and live successfully. So I think that's part of it. And yeah, of course, doing outreach, listening, and all that. But I'm really tired of having those outside parties decide what's best for me. But I will go and sit and listen to their fears, concerns, and hopes, and do my best to address them.
Thank you. Sometimes it seems that the best thing to do is to simply stay outside of the system and work from outside of the system. But again, this seems to be very, very dependent on local context where we're at, what we have to work with. We have to do the best with what we've got, basically. But yeah, the issues of power it's a very big question. And I'm not too sure that we can break down the existing power structures very quickly. Though I think in time that they will change. I see Irit, and it's so great to have you here, Irit. I have your book, and every once in a while I open it for a little bit of inspiration. It's kind of a history of our mental health movement, which is really important. But I see your hand up, and I'm wondering if what you would like to say.
Oh, thanks, Dan. I don't even know who you are. I think it's great that we're both in Canada and that there are others of us here in Canada. I think we should be in better touch. I just wanted to say that I think the way to gradually reduce the hegemony of psychiatry is to keep making alternatives, but especially to keep publicizing them. And I think that if we could find ways to let the whole world know about alternatives, then people would be flocking to them and psychiatry would atrophy and die.
Thank you. Yeah, there have been a number of stories, good positive stories about new peer respites opening up in Georgia and in several other American places, and that kind of media can be very helpful. But again, it's not really addressing that power imbalance, and which I certainly feel whether at the Crisis Respite Center here in Winnipeg or in a medical setting. It's a big struggle to retain any feeling of personal power in those systems. Even not being directly involved, there's an imbalance between them and me because I don't have the letters after my name. So I haven't done it here, but I do put letters after my name. It's RNG, and it stands for real nice guy. Thank you. Rachel, do we have another question?
Yes, I think I can kind of consolidate these because they're kind of in the same category about issues of race and power. So someone asked, when someone has caused harm due to something like racism towards another member, do you have ways to reintegrate them or help them repair harm, or are they just automatically asked to leave? And kind of along the same lines, someone else asked, how is real power acknowledged in the houses? If there is a story that we're all equal, how does that, how is it handled when staff has more power and admin has even more? How does that story affect things? And someone had also brought up the concern of, in Israel, of there being a kind of separate but equal mentality. So I hope that's not too much information, but basically how issues of power and race are addressed.
Would anybody? Not sure if Rachel froze or no. I think that's a question. Would anybody like to address that?
I can try.
Please.
I'm sorry, but sometimes I'm not understanding the question until the end. I think I understand it. If the question was about how we handle situations that with violence or power or I forgot how to say the word. I think how we said before, the 2 hours before, first thing is all the time conversation. And I think also like how Cindy talked before, if in the house we're not talking about rules or about who is saying what to do and what not to do, and everybody is together, I think it's making less all those bad things. But sometimes in an acute situation, I can tell you about a story about one acute situation that came a new person to the house, and sometimes in the beginning you have more anxiety and it's more difficult to be with others, and sometimes you are more violent. And he started to go around in circles in the house, in the meeting. Everybody was around and he was in the middle, and he started to throw things. He took chairs and throw it. He took and he came to people and with an angry face and get closer and do like you want to hit persons. And everybody was very scared, and everybody saw that this person cannot stay at the home. We see only came and he's trying to make mess, and everybody was very scared. And I started to be with him. I was angry too. He was angry, I was angry. He threw chairs, I threw chairs, and everybody didn't understand what happening. And very fast, we made it a dance. So we took it to the playground, not to the. It wasn't like I took it from the place that we are fighting to a place that we are like drama. We are like making a fight in another situation, and we started to dance together. And he came to me and he like put his hands on my head, and I was like, I cannot breathe. And he was very happy that he's so strong. And he took me down to the floor, and I said, I surround, please. And it was very joyful, and everybody was joking. And that's how we got inside to the house, and we didn't call not the police and not nothing like that. And he started, and that's how we got into the house.
I really love that partnering stuff and allowing somebody to can we create an environment where it's okay for somebody to express anger? Can we do it in a way that doesn't blow up the situation in the house? And for me, if we're going back to the question about racism, somebody can come in and they can have an attitude, and I can say to them, I want to be with you. I want to listen to you. I want to hear your story. I want to hear where you got those beliefs from. And when you say that word, I start to shut down. It makes it harder for me to be present, because that word has created a lot of harm, either to me or my family members. And so, the goal is to partner. We're going to try to keep, and for many of us who have had a lot of trauma, to actually have a relationship where you can have a difference of opinion, and yet the commitment is not to annihilate each other, but to work through it. That was a learning curve for me. That was, it doesn't have to be adversarial. It doesn't happen often, but when somebody is asked to leave a FIA, it is not like you're banned. It is more like, here are the other supports you have, and if you give us a time to heal from whatever happened, and then we can talk about how it might be different when you come back. And I think it's really important, at least at a FIA, to do the interview and to say, these are the values. We don't have to agree, but we have to try to respect each other. Is that something that you feel can happen? And I've been a person myself where, I was not ready for prime time. I was not ready to be in a room with a bunch of people. I was not ready to be in a group that was not a comfortable spot. But nobody dismissed me, demonized me. They just said, try again. Maybe today's not the right day, try again. I hope that answers some of Rachel's question as well. And I just want to plug that I love everybody on the panel. I feel so affirmed with similar-minded people. Thank you.
If I may, my brain is just super activated today with the chat constantly moving and so many faces on screen. So please, apologies for being all over the place. But I think the beauty of having a space like a peer-run respite is that you are able to navigate these different thoughts, truth, and feelings, right? And I've personally experienced like problematic racist remarks that guests have made to me. So then I can, take a moment and say, I'm here to support you, and I want to know how you've come to hold those views that you have, and I want to learn more about you. At the same time, as a queer immigrant woman of color, who has experienced significant trauma surrounding those issues, I want to be able to express that when you say those things, it hurts me. So let's talk about this. So when someone does say something that we would consider problematic, the next step would be to acknowledge the hurt, but still maintain our curiosity and open-mindedness, and then really engaging a deep discussion. And when that doesn't lead to more of a mutual and supportive understanding and relationship, then maybe it's something that we, I guess, move up our grievance policy, which starts with having one-on-one conversation between two people who are having the issue, and then potentially involving a third party to kind of mediate the situation, and then involving the direct supervisor or the executive director or what have you. And then I had another thought that I wanted to share, and now it's gone. So if I remember, I'll come back and share it.
It'll come back. Thanks, Say. Now, we've got half an hour of the official summit to go. Anybody who wants to raise your hands, I'm going to try to recognize you and make sure that you get your voice heard. Donald, a lot of us are connecting here for the first time, although we've been active for a long time in our respective communities. Erie, I've been familiar with your work because it exists on the internet, and here we are, face to face, and it is awesome. Don, Ross, I saw your name come up in the chat. You have helped some people find their way here. I'm not too sure about the work that you're doing, but I'm hoping that we get to know each other and that you become part of our movement here. It is just so awesome to have everybody here. Anyways, anybody that wants to chime in is now welcome to raise your hands. And while you do that, we're going to go on a magical mystery tour. I see the yellow brick road there. And Rachel, what's our next topic? What's our next question?
Great, thanks. Another question was that a lot of people come in from more to this field with more, maybe progressive or liberal viewpoints, and then let me see how exactly was this worded. This brings up the question of how we work with more conservative personalities as clients. We generally have strong social beliefs or even agendas. I know that came up if somebody believes in theories or ideas that we don't believe in. How is that how is that handled?
Who would like?
I feel like we've all answered that in a general way. There's a conversation, there's a curiosity, there's a how did you come to believe that? And this is a new one I've learned, especially related to like people believe that their elected officials were pedophiles. I will now ask somebody, is that an important issue to you? And can you tell me why it's an important issue to you? Really, people can have all sorts of opinions. This is the land of multiple truths, and can we just be curious and learn from each other? And usually, in my experience, if somebody has a really strong opinion or belief or whatever, it's based on an experience they had. And we can have a conversation about that experience. That could be a really great conversation, which is really different than somebody just making a pronouncement about different people. Let's get to the root of where that came from and where were you hurt? Where were you hurt that this was so important to you now?
Thanks, Cindy. That's great. Yeah, Alka, what's your thought?
Yes, I just want to add also that maybe it doesn't matter where they believe in. Everybody suffers one way or another, and if the suffering is that big, that just the presence is important at the being with, to return to the initiative, the initial keywords of this meeting. The being with doesn't important if there's a conservative or a socialist in front of me, or maybe a pedophile or a racist, and in that moment he or she is in a bad place, and they need someone to be present without judgment. And maybe I understand what you're saying, Cindy, but maybe I wouldn't even be curious why he's voting conservative, because in that moment it doesn't matter, I think, in my opinion. Yeah.
In my work with groups, I will often, when we have people going on about issues like this, I'll always ask people, so how is this affecting you today? Why is this important to you today? Much like what Cindy said, we got to bring it back to the person. I'm not there to argue about your beliefs, and but what are you feeling here right now, and how can we, if you're feeling distress, how can we address that? Ute, you're on. Do I need to ask you to unmute? Nice to have you back.
I think a bit overwhelmed because I would have to pretend, and I think I wouldn't be able to if this will be a cliche, but because I've just been speaking about it, if people are I don't know, if they really have a very strong belief system that to be pedophile is good for the tortured kids. Of course, they are not tortured. Then I have been thinking about, and this is so emotional, so it's difficult to find words. I've been thinking about the idea to say, I feel hurt or whatsoever. I mean, I don't want to make this up. I just am astonished because to me it sounds a bit therapeutic to say like, oh well, the belief system doesn't matter. If it's about, if the belief system implies hurt and harm of people who cannot in this specific relation have no fair chance to defend themselves. And what I'm putting into the question is what really worries me. If I would show my true feelings, which of course would be like, I feel horrified by what you're saying. I feel really terrible. Then of course I'm the weak person, and this is the point I want to make. Is this disruptive if I show my utter weakness, like I can't cope with this? And this has to do, of course, with, then I do not pretend to have whatsoever power. I have to be there kind of like a person that is at her ends and that can't cope with this. So I'm not having any kind of, oh, I'm the adult, never mind, I just listen to this and then I go home. So yeah, what about really showing our powerlessness and vulnerability? Is this feasible? What can that, because what if the response is, I'm really happy that you are in tears or whatsoever? And I know that this sounds like a cliche, but I want to really point out to this difficult feelings. So I'm sorry for taking up the pedophile thing, but I did it on purpose.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a difficult. I mean, we have to face those beliefs in the world. There's many people who believe that, and it's very challenging to others, particularly because they're strongly held beliefs that people are very resistant to letting go of. But once again, what does this mean for right now, for right here and right now? And I do believe that people have a right to their beliefs and to their feelings as well. And I have to accept that. At the same time, I'm pretty clear. You're not going to convince me. I don't want you to convince me. I'm not going to convince you of my beliefs, but you're not also going to change my beliefs. So let's be here in this moment right now. Let's maybe put that aside for the moment and consider why we're here together right now. What brought us here? And so that we can move forward. Doug, I see you. I think you have something to add to this conversation here. Have you?
I have a question, but I can wait my turn for it.
Thank you.
I just have a quick response to that last question. And, sometimes I have to tell somebody I'm not the right person for you to talk to. I'm not emotionally prepared to have this conversation, but I can look for somebody. And as somebody who experienced childhood sexual trauma, yeah, my bells and whistles go off for me, but I also realize that many people who do that had it done to them, and that helps me in that moment to realize, the same thing we've been saying, I am one of those people who thinks it's important to consider the context of the statement. Where does this come from? When did you get this belief? What were your experiences? Because I can have that conversation a lot easier than the other one.
That's right. What happened to you?
Right. And there are also times where I have been with somebody and say, for instance, they say, I hate trans people. I tell my kids to kill them. I'm not in that conversation. And any conversation where you're talking about killing people, you know, I'm not, you know, I don't think I should be expected to be in that conversation. And I call for backup or whatever. And you know, that's my personal limit. Other people may sit with it differently. But in that moment, I'm in so much hurt and pain. You know, that I'm not signing up for it. It's not good for me.
You're absolutely right, Cindy. We need to be able to set our boundaries as well, and we are also entitled to those boundaries. I believe part of our self-care, and in order to be able to come back and do this another day, we have to preserve those boundaries. It's really helpful when we have a diversity of people in a setting, so that we can sort of pass this person on to somebody else and say, I can't deal with this, but maybe you could handle this. Maybe you could talk. Ty, what's up?
So you were all having a lovely discussion before about, you know, giving people the space that they need to recover with, or get through whatever they're getting through, without forcing the issue. And I think unsolicited advice is never a good thing. It generally doesn't help. But one of the things that happened to me in the system, and I've seen with other people that I wish people would talk about, is the harm that comes from witnessing someone else in pain and being told to look the other way, being told to not pay attention to it and ignore it. And I'm just thinking of all my experiences, you know, in residential treatment facilities where either I or someone else was screaming at the top of their lungs in pain, looking for attention, looking for help, and just, you know, being told not to acknowledge that pain and acknowledge that. So my question is, how do you balance being there for people and creating an atmosphere for healing with meeting people where they're at and letting them come to the table when they're ready?
Would anybody like to address Ty's question?
I think it's a very hard question, because sometimes it's conflict. It's you want that you have a good atmosphere, and you want also that people can come and scream when they hurt. So it's, I think that you build this atmosphere when everybody in the house understands that this is a house that you can scream in. So today you scream, tomorrow I will scream. And so you're not afraid from screaming. You're not afraid from people that take out their suffer. Sometimes you can come to the house and it will look very horrible. It's not all the time will be quiet and nice. Sometimes there will be a lot of tense at the house. But the atmosphere is that we're talking that we want to bring the house to be more handle, more quiet, more peaceful environment. But to get to that point, you need to you need to bring that sometimes the house won't be so quiet.
Thank you for that. And I think also for me, when people are in a place of agony and screaming and pain and their energy is very loud, I'll often just enter the room and just sit down, and I'm making sure I don't become imbalanced or get out, let the stress of the situation get to my mind, so that I can. So I'll often do breathing exercises just to like center myself, and then just be fully present with the person, so that in time, once the energy is expended, once there's that we're in this room at the same time together, and then we just eventually the person once the energy has subsided, we start to talk about what's going on, and really just giving that space to be able to let the energy take place, then also to really be supportive and walk alongside that energy as best as possible. And you know, sometimes the person just wants to go be alone, and sometimes they want to engage. And so after the kind of that sort of hurt and pain, so it really is about, for me, presence, and then just being aware of the right questions to ask or the right reflections to make, and just really engaging in a proactive way with people. So that, and really back to IPS, is learning from each other. What are we learning? So it's not me just being the caretaker here, but how are we co-experiencing, co-creating this experience?
And depending on your setting, I mean, somebody did this for me. It was my favorite therapy. We got in the car and we yelled and screamed and swore, and they were like really good at it. And so they set the example for me. And then going in the woods and screaming. Like, is there a way to proactively plan for people to have a way of expressing anger? One time, Sarah David Owl had to call me and said, "What is happening to all the glasses at AFIA?" And I'm like, do I tell the truth? And she says, if people are breaking them, we would go outside and break them. Could you just go to the secondhand store and buy plates instead? Like, instead of using the nice stuff. And I said, okay, we can do that. And we had an area where, you know, so many of us have had to keep our feelings down so much that they start to come out sideways. You know, they come out at the wrong times. And to actually have a space where, and I love what you said too, because what is pain? I mean, what is that anger? That anger, there's something underneath it, right? But I can't even have a conversation until I get that anger out, right? And it is very tiring to be angry for a long time. And then what's under there is usually pain, loss, grief, or fear. You know, and so can we get to that place to, you know, where the anger gets out, so then there's a chance to have a conversation.
Thank you, Cindy. Yeah, I was really struck by that image of the dance. Dialectical behavior therapy teaches us that, but Remi's description of a dance was beautiful, and here again we're talking about a form of a dance that we do together, but we've got to figure out the steps as we're going. A lot of this requires a lot of creativity. You know, who first had the idea that it would be a good thing to do to go out and break some glasses or some plates? But it worked, and so you incorporate that, right? Does anybody else have any observations on this?
I've found that when someone is, let's say, having like an angry outburst or screaming really loudly or what have you, and the team member at the respite goes and checks in with the other guests who are at the respite at the same time, there's typically understanding and compassion. And that's, I think, because a lot of us have been in similar situations where we just felt like we had no control over what was happening. And then, like, you know, we all express anger and frustration and fear. So these are feelings that we can all kind of relate to. And sometimes I see really beautiful connections between the guests themselves too, after, like, once the anger has passed and the person had the opportunity to express it. So I think it's really so important to remember that anger is often just what's on the surface, and that folks at the respite house aren't fragile, as is the person who's expressing anger in the moment is not fragile, and the staff member is not fragile either. So another thing to remember is that sense of mutuality, like we're all in this together. Sometimes you take up a little more space, other times I take up a little more space. It's an ongoing negotiation of having an authentic human connection.
Thank you, Cindy.
I maybe want to say another thing about when situations are ending not good, because not all the time we succeed, and sometimes people are starting to be very it's very hard to be with them, and sometimes we are also have our boundaries, and we start to be angry, and we need to see how we are not getting off of our boundaries and starting to be violent. It can be. I'm ashamed to say that, but everybody of us knows that it's hard. So what we're trying to do in our houses is all the time. It's not only on you. All the time, every person in the staff and also the residents, we're looking at each other. And if we see that another staff member is now a little bit tired, a little bit angry, so we're talking together, maybe we're saying, okay, now maybe you will take a step behind. Maybe this week you will work less, because this work is very hard. And we're all the time in the house are trying to see how much time in the week it's good for a person to work, and not for everybody it's the same time. And the last thing about parents, I think parents and staff is not the same. To be a parent to a son or a girl that is now in a awkward situation it's much more hard than a staff member that is coming to the house for a shift to 8 hours, 12 hours, also 48 hours. And also because you're so close to your son, it's much more harder. So if there are parents here in the audience, don't feel bad that what you hear here, you're not succeed to do it at home, because for a staff member, it's easier to do it for a parent.
I think that when we take serious the notion of community, we need to consider that sometimes someone in the group express the anger of another person in the group. It's not necessarily personal. It's an energy, and it sometimes man can come in touch with the anger, but it's not necessarily my anger, and we need to support, give support to anger with the community. How can we give holding to anger in each of the group? And so when we are sitting in a circle, this is more easier to work in this way. That is my experience. Then the circle represents community and the field wherein something can happen, but it is not necessarily a personal. So my experience when sometimes lives an altered state, he expresses a lot of emotions and feelings of the community, of the family. It's not necessarily his feeling, but we can support by coming together.
Yes. Ute, we have just a couple of minutes. We are going to stay on, so if it's going to be a longer discussion, we're going to be having the official closing in about 5 minutes. But if it's quick, what's on your mind?
Okay, just the thought I had after my little statement, which wasn't planned, was to speak about the importance of the community of people, be it in the Peer Respite, be it in the Soteria or something else. And this is something that impressed me very much in, I think it's called family homes or so in Sweden, where they took a lot of time in between staff members as people, as human beings, to be to learn to trust, to learn to know so many aspects of the real other person. And this is something that I find very important. So like kind of connects to the community thing, and this makes it possible, like one person to be vulnerable at the moment and another person. There's just, I think that everybody feels if the staff members share with each other much more of their big life experience on a daily basis, there's a total change in the culture, in the atmosphere, in the house. And this is one of the main topics I have the biggest interest in.
Thank you. Any comments, or I'm going to go to Carrie. Diane, I see you.
I can never find the hand. I can never find the hand to raise my hand. Very briefly about the how to respond when somebody is yelling, is clearly upset, troubled. I guess I give the person a little bit of space for however long it feels right. Definitely breathe to calm down, because it just really grates when somebody's yelling. And frankly, I would just say hi, calm hi, and give it some time and see what the response is. And maybe say, I'm here for you, and just leave it up to the person. Take it from there and leave it up to the person to say something, and just listen. And of course, if you're not equipped to say something, you feel you're not equipped to have a give and take, let the person know and say you'll try to find someone. I mean, that's my reaction.
Thank you. Yeah, we need sometimes to be able to step away as well for a whole lot of different reasons. So we have to recognize when we can do that. Carrie, we're gonna.
I'm sorry, Stan. It's 2 minutes to the top of the hour, and if it's okay, I just wanted to let people know that, like you've said, we're continuing on after this, but the official thing is going to close at the top of the hour. I want to make sure that people know next week is kind of the culmination of all of this, and I hope that all of you come back, and all of the people who've been on the other 4 times, and even new people can come back, because it'll be a lot more interactive amongst you all, and we'll be giving you a chance to get into groups around people to figure out who's here from other places geographically where you are, and we'll talk some about topics, and we'll talk about how this group will come together and continue on. We're thinking of all sorts of possibilities, like monthly or quarterly, more in-depth workshops, group mentoring, like what do you help us figure out what we will do together? And now the us includes all of you. We all together. Let's figure out where we're going to take this and move forward. So please come back next week. I'm very excited about it. And I just wanted to make that plug. What else, Stan, anybody else in closing the official part?
Say, have you prepared a few words to officially close our day? And you guys, Jim and Carrie, hang in there, and we're going to get to you still. Anybody? And Mia. Stay, and Mia also. Yes, she's not on the screen. So say, would you like to wrap us up? Oh man, there's so many things more left to be said, eh?
Grace covered most of what I wanted to mention about next week's session, and I just wanted to thank all the panelists and all of you lovely people for being here and sharing this space today. That's it.
I'm so sorry, Say. I was just so excited personally about next week.
No, not a problem at all. Thank you so much for keeping everyone updated.
Yeah, one of the reasons for the poll was try to determine how we could break people out into breakout rooms, so that if you have an area that you particularly want to discuss, you'll be with other people able to do that. I think we're also going to try to figure out some sort of geographical room so we can have a very quick meeting with each other from geographical areas. We're still trying to figure out how to work that out. So because some places have many people and some places have almost no one. Thank you very much.
Also, one other thing is that the time change happens in some parts of the world and not others. So, so check the time in your part of the world. We're trying to help get it accurate, and also double check for yourselves if you think a time change is coming up.
Yeah,
we don't want to miss you.
Dealing with time zones, but bless you all for coming here in the middle of the night or in late evening or the very early morning. That's such a great commitment, you know, and yeah, I know that you really believe in this work that we're doing here. I too would like to just thank all the panelists for joining us. If you can stay, that would be awesome, but some of you may need to leave. You could commit it to 3 hours, and if you have to go, we'll see you all next week. And you've contributed so much. I think we had a really great discussion today. I appreciate your participation. You are all so unique, and yet so, I feel like we share something, you know, here that feel a connection. And I love all of your ideas, and thank you very much. So we will consider this the official close of this session.